Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, even under the best of circumstances, deciding to make a home in an unfamiliar country is never an easy thing. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I am the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more, in a light and in a conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to assume that you do, because you're actually listening right now. You're within the sound of my voice. We would love it if you subscribe to the podcast. Give us that old subscribe and the like and the 5-star rating, basically wherever you get your podcasts. We're at Amazon, Spotify, Apple, Google. It's all good. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, I'd really appreciate it. Also, please check us out on social media. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, festivals, basically the moving image at large. Because if we love to write about it and watch it and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. On this episode, we've got even more hot docs from the Canadian International Documentary Festival, Hot Docs, running here in our fair city of Toronto from April 28th, which is today, through May 8th. There's a plethora of fantastic films available for audiences, not just in theater, but online as well, if you are so inclined. So please go to hotdocs.ca and find out any kind of info you need if you want to check out a few films at the festival. We certainly recommend that you do. But first off, we're going to recommend a conversation we just had with director Lina Rodiguez and her new film, My Two Voices, which is playing at the festival. She is a homegrown, well, indirectly homegrown. She's from Colombia originally, but has spent many years in Toronto and is a fairly prolific filmmaker that we've had the chance to talk with before. And her film, My Two Voices, is a real quiet film, but it's very intimate, and it's got some power to it as well. It's basically three Latin American women sharing their experiences of immigrating to Canada, and we get we get very honest stories, and we get a real sense of what it means to come to a country like this. And I mean, especially when people are fleeing from other countries where there is violence and where there is, other bad things going on, and about finding a way to make your new home, which is never an easy thing at all. And it's a really fascinating film, which I cannot recommend highly enough. It is playing on Friday, April 29th, at the TIFF Bell Lightbox, and as well on Tuesday, May 3rd at the TIFF Bell Lightbox. I also believe it is available for streaming if any of you are so inclined. But I talked with Lina just about sort of why she wanted to make this film, and jumping between documentary and narrative filmmaking, which she also does quite well. And I think we had a fantastic talk, which, as I always say, it's a pretty good one. So I hope you enjoy it. All right. Well, Lina, thank you so much for joining us today. I really do appreciate it.
David, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Now, I mean, obviously, congratulations on the film. I mean, it's really a gorgeous piece of work. I mean, I guess my first question for you is, walk me through sort of the origin of you wanting to tell this story on your end.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think maybe you know this, but I don't know if the people listening know this. I'm an immigrant myself. So
Yes.
I was born in Colombia, and I moved to Canada to study film. So I think this sort of, I guess, reality of being in between places, or being, you kind of like negotiating different realities sort of emotionally, because I moved here without my family. So my family's back in Colombia. And just, navigating like culture, language, and just being in between is sort of I guess the space that I and many other immigrants inhabit. So my films, up until now, I shot my first two films in Bogota, which is the city where I was born. And I think because these reality filling in between these two cultures, I wanted to start addressing that in my filmmaking. So I was writing a script for a fiction film that is hopefully going to be released in this fall, and it's called So Much Tenderness. So I was in the process of writing this film, and it's also a film that has like it follows the immigrant journey of a Colombian woman.
Right.
And then I met Claudia, who's one of the women in Mis Dos Voces, which is the film that we're talking about. But because I was developing this other script, and Claudia is an immigration settler herself, when we met, I just kind of asked her if she would give me feedback on the script that I was writing. And so then I got to spend time with her and learn a little bit about what she does, which is, I wish I had known Claudia when I first arrived. As an immigration settler, what she does is like she helps people who are arriving to connect to different resources, to connect to community. She kind of is like a weaver, like a community weaver that is connecting people to resources and just kind of accompanying people throughout their immigrant journey as they settle in. So after spending time with Claudia, I just felt like she was just like what she does and how she is bringing community together was such a great thing that I wanted to make a film sort of about her. And then I asked her if she would introduce me, and a lot of our conversations too, and also because of my research for my film, and my friends and community here, like women tend to be kind of like the part of the family that it's not always the case, but when people immigrate here, women tend to kind of settle or adapt or like learn the language. So I was really interested in the role of women in immigrant processes. So I asked her to introduce me to two women that she had supported in their immigrant journeys, and she introduced me to Ana and Marinela. So I started talking to them, and it really started, I guess, unconsciously, probably from my own desire to try to deal with this simultaneity that I feel as an immigrant. But I think after meeting them, it became a process, like it's a human process of getting to know these incredible women. And I did not want to tell their stories. I did not believe that my job is to tell their stories. Instead, I think the process of making the film was a way to kind of for us to go towards each other, to encounter each other, and for me to find a way to celebrate the complexity of their identities that is not fixed, that is not easy to define, and then create a sort of portrait, which is what the film became, a sort of like triptych of the complex, nuanced, and fluid experiences of immigration, as well as the identities of these three Latin American women living in Toronto, in the Great Toronto area.
Well, and I mean, I love that. And I mean, I think something that you did here, which really allows this to feel much more like a piece of art as opposed to something, kind of rote, is that, I mean, obviously you didn't show your subjects. And I mean, like, were you very conscious of not doing that early on? Because it feels like if you had tried to do this, but we had seen their faces, or we sort of had faces to attach to the voices, it would have come off like sort of your standard HBO wrote documentary kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I had like a really clear instinct as I was making the film, but also I think it probably happened simultaneously as I was getting to spend time with them, but also as I was trying to figure out how can I do this. And after you get to speak to people, we get to share stories, like the vastness. I mean, I have so much audio material of our conversations, like I have hours and hours and hours. So it's just like in order to encompass like someone's journey, which is also changing, because one of the beautiful things that Claudia said to me, and I completely relate to this, is like as newcomers or as immigrants, we're always arriving. So even if I've been here for many years, there's always going to be a joke or a word or a cultural reference in Canada that I don't understand. So you're always kind of learning. So because this kind of continuum of experience, like they're always kind of trying to find a ground, I couldn't really fix it. So instinctually, I just felt that inviting the audience to follow sort of like their gestures and their textures. And I think a lot of the things that are around us as people, but especially women too, like I think identifying women with a face brings a lot of perhaps preconceptions about who someone is. So I really wanted to invite people to create like a soft and caring and loving journey for the audience to get a sense of them through different ways in which they move, the things that they wear, parallel to them talking about their experiences, and then just for us to see their faces at the very end. As a way to like take a different path to seeing them, or like even avoiding the trap of thinking that because you see someone's face, you know who they are. And I never wanted to tell people who they are. I never felt that it was my job to define them.
No, for sure. And you know what? I mean, I think the softness that you alluded to really does lend to sort of making this feel very personal and very sort of experiential, like basically like you're sitting in a room having a conversation with somebody. But I mean, is it true you shot this all on 16? Because I mean, that definitely adds to kind of the softness of it all. And I mean, it definitely, like, there's a warmth there that I don't think would have come through had you been shooting sort of digitally or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I decided to shoot on Super 16 precisely because of that, because I feel that just film and the stocks that we used, allowed for softness in multiple ways in terms of focus, but just like the texture. But I also chose to record sounds and image separately, and I think that was also an instinctual choice. I think it came out of the human and personal relationship that I developed with them, where I knew that, like, it wasn't about me showing up to ask them questions and get the answers that I wanted. It was a process of getting to share experiences together. So instinctively, I think I just felt that I wanted to shoot sound and image separately. So we shot all of the images first throughout like a summer. And then after we were done the images, Sofia Bogdanovich, who's a friend and a filmmaker, I asked her to do sound recording. So it was Sofia, me, and each of the women at their houses alone having these conversations. And Sofia doesn't speak Spanish, so she's a wonderful sound recordist, but also she wasn't understanding everything that we were saying. And I think that really allowed, I really wanted to create a space that was welcoming and safe for us to share our experiences, but particularly for them to also, trust me with their experiences.
Now, I mean, this is something I'm always curious about, because, I mean, obviously, like, I've known you for a little bit, and you've got a few films under your belt, but you've never been shy on sort of jumping from sort of a fictional script to doing something in the documentary space and back and forth. I'm kind of curious, for you, when you're developing something, is it story, or is it like, what is the hook for you to get in, and how do you know how you're going to do it? Because I mean, obviously there's freedom to move sort of in both areas. I'm always kind of curious when people sort of hop back and forth between documentary and sort of straight narrative filmmaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it probably comes from my journey into filmmaking. After film school, I felt that I gained, of course, a lot of skills, but I lost community or like connection to community when I finished film school. But I think it was also this idea of being a director, that you're supposed to know everything and you're also supposed to be everyone's boss. And I really not only rejected that, but I felt really out of place with that expectation. So after I finished film school, when I had no access to equipment and kind of like community kind of becomes more dispersed, I started just kind of making films by myself. And I think that process of using it's interesting when you say about like what the film is about and how to make it. I mean, I make films because I'm really interested in that challenge. And it's like, how do I express something through the medium of film? So I think what I'm trying to say is that I think the process sort of driven approach that I have, I apply to both documentary and fiction. But of course, the modes, I guess, are different. But to me, this film, because I could make a fiction film out of this, of course, but I think it was honoring and celebrating like the human relationship and the women, and just kind of like trying to focus on them in the way that I did felt like the right mode. And then, the film that I was writing, that I was telling you about when I met Claudia, it's called So Much Tenderness, is a fiction film that is kind of like a cousin to Mis Dos Voces. So I get asked this a lot, and it's a really interesting question that I don't think I have a definite answer. I think that because I'm interested in solving the challenge between how do you speak through cinema and what do I say, I am always sort of open to expand and contract, or like make a small film or a bigger film, and just kind of like explore just different modes of filmmaking. And I love that. I mean, when you're trying to make a living as a filmmaker, you need to be also flexible to have big and small projects, but it also just keeps me active and yeah, I just kind of love the diversity and the challenges that each kind of mode brings.
Do you think the boom for content that we've had over like the past decade or so has sort of changed your shift? I mean, not necessarily your shift, but just sort of the shift in filmmaking in general? Because I mean, you're not necessarily making films for the multiplex. Like you're making films as pieces of art to be shown and this, that, and the other, but you're like, it's not a question of, you know, you want to make money, but it's not, you're not necessarily driven by sort of the profitability of the film. How do you sort of navigate wanting to express yourself as an artist versus needing to sort of monetize and find a way to sort of, you know, push yourself forward to the next project so you can afford to make the next project?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that we are in a kind of fairly conservative time again, where even with streaming companies, like I just, you know, I think it's a time where although there seems to be freedom for people to consume anything that they want, you know, like being kind of relying on certain sort of streaming companies or algorithms to kind of tell you if you like this, you'll like this. I do still think that there is niche, like there's like a niche potential for
Sure.
different kinds of filmmaking, and hopefully by like, because I am personally interested in making films in different modes, so it's not that I am driven by becoming a multimillionaire, but of course I think the sustainability of filmmaking practice is definitely something that concerns me. So for me personally, I'm trying to, yeah, be open to new ways of making films, and also hopefully bringing, yeah, like I guess my kind of filmmaking and expanding how I make films to different parameters. So I, you know, like I was asked to like write a pilot for a TV series that's in development. I don't know if it's going to happen. So I like, I'm interested in working in different modes. I know that there's always been a real separation, but I think now it's worse. Like when you think about the 70s, even in independent American filmmaking, I mean, there's like different times where there was more space for things to like exist. Like the fact that I hear people like Kelly Reichardt saying that it's really hard for her to get a film funded. It's pretty sad because yes, I think we are a little bit in a homogenous landscape, even if it seems that people have a lot of choice. But that being said, I think it is possible to make things and connect them to distribution systems that are, you know, there's places like Movie or Criterion, and even in Latin America, there's a lot of VOD places that are just trying to show just different kinds of films. So I think the challenge, I think, as filmmakers, but also for people in the industry, becomes how can we open up more space for just like different kinds of filmmaking and different ways, and reimagining distribution models that just don't have to follow everything has to go either to Cannes or Netflix, you know?
No, and I mean you're right. We're living in such an interesting time because I mean I do agree with you. We are in a bit of a homogenized period, but there still is sort of that clear-cut window for different voices and different artists, even though it is narrow. And I mean, full disclosure for listeners, Lina used to work at TIFF for the festival. That's how we know each other, and just to see how these things grow and how these things evolve, it's really a fascinating time. It almost feels like, even though the window is narrower, and I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like there's almost more empowerment back to the artist as they're trying to fight through that narrow window than there may have been in recent years.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think that there's I think there's always, I guess capitalist interest, of course, to make money or to make something that works and make something like that. I think I see a lot of different institutions and different production companies and different people trying to monetize conversations about diversity, where you can maybe have people with diverse cultural backgrounds and many different experiences to maybe make films, but the expectation is that it's going to be the kind of same type of film. So I don't know. I'm not sure if I see that. I mean, maybe there's an empowerment in having a bit more space and giving visibility.
I think maybe from a technological standpoint, just because I mean, you can see people like Sean Baker and even Soderbergh making feature films with their iPhones.
Yeah. But I think that, I mean, there's always this kind of question, I guess, about, I mean, like aesthetics and what people expect. And so even just thinking about, I know, like festivals or maybe sales agents, like it's, you know, and we're also coming out of a pandemic where like cinemas were closed. So I think it's also a scary time where it's hard for people to take risks. So I mean, from an independent filmmaker point of view, I think as filmmakers, we're always taking the risk to make the films that we want to make in the way that we want to make them. And sometimes that might not be what the so-called market wants. But I think that discrepancy has always been there. And it is, I mean, I guess it is financially unfair because in many senses, filmmakers are the ones taking chances from the get-go, and then you might just not be able to either find a place for your film, or you just have to distribute your film by yourself, which maybe in that sense there's an empowerment that, you know, like as filmmakers now we can, you know, you can hold the rights to your film and then just do with your film what you want, instead of perhaps giving your film to maybe someone who might not be as interested, but is just, I don't know, taking it because they need to diversify their catalog, or because they just need quantity. But I mean, I think there's just ways. I mean, one of the things that I talk about when I was teaching to my students is that not all of the films have to follow the same model. And I think
true.
As filmmakers, I feel empowered in the way that I can create a different way of working that also respects people and cares for people, but also that doesn't have to have the same production model of like a film that is 100 times the size of mine, and then have these unrealistic expectations of fitting in a marketplace. I hate that word, where like it doesn't fit because there's also no space for it, and there's no real desire for that. So how do we open up spaces differently? And I think that's through like audience development and just like different distribution models.
No, and I mean, I agree with you. And I mean, I think Hot Docs is a great place for something like that. And I mean, just to start putting a bow on this, I've got to ask, I mean, is there, because I mean, obviously the film's been around for a little bit, you're bringing it to Hot Docs now. Is there always a little bit of, is it an extra bump for you, like just sort of emotionally or personally to get the hometown run, to get sort of the screening in the town that you call home versus sort of anywhere else that you may have screened the film?
Well, I mean, I guess for me, I have sort of like two homes, so it would be really interesting to show the film in Colombia and
totally,
show later, and but it's also it's my first Canadian film, so it was all funded in Canada. All of my prior films were actually Colombian, they were never Canadian. There was a whole bunch of access to Canadian industry things that I couldn't access because the films were not officially Canadian.
Right.
It's my first Canadian film, but there's things that about being Colombian in the Colombian film industry that I can't access because the film is not Colombian, even if it features two Colombians and it's like 99% in Spanish. But for sure, I mean, I think for all of my films before, the films to show in Colombia was really important. And I think this film, being my first film set in Canada, the fact that it is exploring and questioning ideas of what it means to be Canadian, and the sort of like hybrid nature of like the hybrid nature of being Canadian, and what it means that it's not a unique experience to Colombians or Latin Americans. Like, we live in a city of immigrants. So to show a film like that, 99% in Spanish, that is talking about being Canadian and being in Canada in the context of Hot Dogs, I think it's great. And also we'll have friends and family and community and the different communities coming to see it. So absolutely, it was really important for me to show the film in Toronto, and I'm really, really happy it's happening in the context of Hot Dogs. And I'm really excited that Hot Dogs, it's showing the film, and many other films that are sort of like questioning this idea of what Canada is and how it's represented on screen.
Well, and you know, I'm glad you did that, because I mean, I think you've done an exceptional job of it, and it really is a film that makes you want to listen and sort of understand and sort of appreciate these experiences. And I mean, much like many of your other films, I think you've done a great job with this, and just, you know, keep up the good work, Lina. I mean, thank you so much for the time today.
David, thank you so much. I love that. I love what I think one of the biggest learnings that I had, even if I'm an immigrant, was the power of listening. So I think what you just said, that I'm happy that came across to you in the film. And I think just spending more time, maybe hopefully trying to listen to each other so we can learn from each other, can be a good way to reimagine how we can be together and work together, make films together, watch each other's films,
make the world a better place. That's a fantastic, you know, note to end on. And again, Lina, thank you so much for the time. And again, congrats on the film.
David, thank you so much for your sensitive questions and for taking the time.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.